When you self-accept, you are where you need to be, and that the space that you are taking up in is rightfully yours. And then you get that sense of knowing, of belonging. It's not by somebody's approval. No, it's by your own.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Corbin-Westphal, a Broadway music director, voice coach, and tenured professor in the musical theater department at the University of Michigan.
And I'm Chelsea Wilson, a performer turned voice teacher to Broadway stars and vocal coach on Broadway productions like The Phantom of the Opera, School of Rock, and more.
Here on the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, you can expect real talk about the business, practical advice, and constant encouragement.
We believe there's space for every artist in this industry. All you need is the right support. So consider us your two-woman hype team. Welcome to the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast, where we help musical theater performers get unstuck and take the next step in their careers. We have something very exciting in store today. We are interviewing the one, the only, Ms. Kristin Chenoweth. I'm so excited. Truthfully, I've been so nervous, Cynthia. I've been so nervous.
Isn't that funny how no matter how far we get in our fields and in our business, that, you know, when you haven't met somebody that you've felt like you've known your whole life and admired, it's so fascinating. As I've gotten to know her the last couple years, it's been really lovely. But yeah, the first time that I had to step in a room with her and play the piano and teach it was a little butterflies. I don't get nervous very often anymore, but I definitely was at that time. Yeah.
Well, this interview is really, really special. I don't think Kristin Chenoweth needs much of an introduction, but we've still got one for her.
Let us tell you a little about Kristin Chenoweth if you don't already know. Kristin Chenoweth is an Emmy and Tony award-winning actress and singer. Her career spans film, television, voiceover, and stage. In 1999, she won a Tony Award for You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. I saw that production, by the way, and it is still to this day one of the funniest performances on a Broadway stage I have ever seen in my life. I feel so honored to have seen her in that show. She was also nominated, of course, for her original role of Glinda the Good Witch in Wicked in 2004. Wicked, of course, just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Kristin has also been nominated for 2 Emmy Awards and for a People's Choice Award for her role on Glee. She's also starred on Broadway in numerous other shows such as Steel Pier, Promises, Promises on the 20th Century, and Candide. You can see her on Schmigadoon. Musical theater folks, if you have not seen Schmigadoon yet, you simply must. It is fabulous. It is sort of a send-up of every Broadway show that has ever been written. Kristin plays 2 characters in both of the seasons that are just hilarious. You must watch Schmigadoon. It's on Apple TV+. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention Pushing Daisies. If you have never seen Pushing Daisies, Kristin won an Emmy for that series.
I watched that when it came out.
Oh, it didn't run very long, but it was so good. Go back and watch.
That was
Pushing
a heartbreaker of a cancellation for me. I was like, I could have done with so many more seasons of that show.
So many more. That is worth a watch, and you can still stream that. Currently,
she's making her way back to Broadway. Yes.
She is making her way back to Broadway with a show called Queen of Versailles, written by none other than Stephen Schwartz, who, of course, also wrote Wicked. Kristin's also producing on that show, which I think is new for her, so that's very exciting. In January 2023, Kristin released a hilarious and very insightful gift book called I'm No Philosopher, But I Have Thoughts for Saints, Sinners, and the Rest of Us. It is a really meaningful and meme-worthy philosophical musing on connection, creativity, loss, love, faith, and closure. And we are going to talk all about that book on this interview with her. It's a delightful book. She also recently released her first picture book for children called What Will I Do With My Love Today?, which is a heartwarming and sweet tale about a young girl who shares her love through acts of generosity around New York City. Also a delightful book. We're going to talk about that one too. She is also an editor and participant in an essay book called My Moment, 106 Women on Fighting for Themselves, which was just released in May of 2022. That one also, it is just 106 uplifting stories from women spanning all walks of life. It is a beautiful book. She also started her Kristin Chenoweth Broadway Boot Camp, which is a training camp for students from 8th grade to 12th grade. In 2022, she teamed up with Kenny Ortega, great director and choreographer, and Monarch Media team to produce a docuseries called 1300 Miles to Broadway, which was inspired by her Broadway boot camp. 1300 Miles to Broadway, the title of that being how far Broken Arrow, Oklahoma is from New York City. Kristin grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. That is where the camp is located. And that's why the title 1300 Miles to Broadway. And that series follows these students as they navigate the world of performing arts through masterclasses in acting, singing, and dancing as they prepare for a future as performers and artists. I was lucky to be a part of that docuseries, actually. And that was the first time I had worked with Kristin. And then I returned to the camp again to teach last year, that is a delightful camp. We're going to talk about that in the podcast.
I can't wait to see you in your docuseries debut, Cynthia. I'm going to be cheering for you as soon as you come on the screen.
Listen, I'm just glad they provided a hair and makeup person for all of us, because goodness knows if you're going to have 100 cameras pointed in your face, it's nice to have a hair and makeup person who is a professional.
Yes. Incredible. Incredible.
In addition to all of this amazing work that she does, she's also a passionate supporter of charities which dedicate their time and efforts to helping those in need. She formed a charity partnership with the Broken Arrow Performing Arts Center Foundation in her home state of Oklahoma. Her accomplishments were honored by her hometown, with that foundation actually naming a theater after her in 2012, which is where the boot camp is held. It is a beautiful theater. She is just a delightful, caring, loving human being. And I'm so excited for all the listeners to get to know her a little bit more through some of the work that she does outside of what you know her to be on Broadway. Probably you all know that Wicked album. You all know that gorgeous voice she has. You all know that she is hilarious on stage. But this conversation's it's a little deeper. It's really lovely. And we get into some heavy stuff.
I think she just keeps it real. She's just really, really honest and is so generous with what she shares. So with that, let's dive into the interview, shall we?
Let's do it.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Kristin. How are you?
Hi, Sid.
It's so nice to meet you, Kristin. Thank you for being here with us.
Of course. I get anything from my
Kristin,
girl.
this is Chelsea Wilson, my online partner, fabulous
nice
voice teacher.
We need more people like you too. We need more people like you too.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, Kristin, I feel like I've spent a lot of time with you in the last week or so. I've been listening to the audiobook of your book. Yes. And I'm just like, and now she's going to talk back to me in this interview. Like, we've been having this dialogue already, and now we get to chat. I'm just thrilled.
Oh, I'm so glad you were listening to it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I know we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah. Chelsea did the audiobook. I did the Kindle version. We both have our favorite quotes, which we will be coming at you with.
So excited.
Oh my gosh. I love this book. My moment.
Isn't it great?
Oh my gosh.
I wish we had released it not during COVID, because it needs to be out there again. And that's why I'm plugging it so much, because it's very special. It's something that me, Kathy, Najimy, and Shelley Wright we poured our heart and soul into getting all those women, and the ones we don't know, even more importantly. And we sent everybody cameras and had them take the picture themselves of how they want to be seen. I love that book. I'm so proud of it.
We've got lots of questions. We'll see what we can get through in 30 minutes or less. But now that we're on this book, let's go down this path for a second. So you have over 100 women curated in this book. And just for the podcast listeners, the question asked of the book was, what was the moment in your life when you realized you were ready to fight for yourself? I love that question. Can you tell us a little, what was the inspiration for that question, or the book itself, the 5 women who put it together? Tell us a little how this came to life.
Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. So Shelley Wright, a famous country and western, singer-songwriter from the 90s. And I was there in 2009 when she decided to come out in a world where you don't do that. And we're both Christian people, so then she had to deal with that aspect as well. And she came to me and Kathy and said, I have this idea. She started fighting for herself. And she asked us the question, when was the first time you remember really deciding to fight for yourself? And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't think. And Kathy was like, I need it. And we took time to figure out what those answers were. And then we started asking a few of our other friends that are in the book, like, what was yours? And some people knew exactly right away, but most people didn't. And then we decided this is like a coffee table book. This right here is a coffee table book. So then Kathy and me and Shelley produced it. And we wanted to get faces in there that obviously people recognize, but also faces that are not recognizable so that people can hear from everyone about when they decided to fight. And I still pick that book up and read it and am very surprised by people's answers. I mean, I've read it cover to cover, but I'm still like, wow, like they said that. You know, we had a famous model in there that when she was 18 and they were body shaming her and she was trying to make it and she just walked out and said, no, I'm good. I don't need to do that. And I thought, wow, that's bold. I wouldn't have been able to do that at 18. I didn't really fight for myself until very recently in the past several years. And mine was, a pretty well-known accident that happened to me in 2012, but I didn't fight for it then. I was told if I made any kind of a stink, I would never work again. So out of fear being the number one thing, and intimidation and bullying, I did not fight for myself. But what happens when you don't do that? It comes out in other ways. It always comes up. And you ladies know exactly what I'm talking about. And it did. Came out in depression, came out in eczema, came out in vertigo, comes out all the stuff. And until I finally dealt with it and forgave, even though there was not going to be an apology, it changed a lot of my perspective. So I was thankful for the book on a very personal level.
Wow. How did you choose? Because what you said about some of the women being recognizable, some of them not, I thought was part of what makes that book so incredibly special. I don't necessarily identify with some of the famous people in the book, but boy, did I identify with some of the folks who are living what I would call sort of the everyday life, and then you glean a little inspiration from all different types of people, which was amazing. So how did you choose which women to include? I'm sure you could have included a million different women.
Well, we started asking each other, like, who are your friends that aren't in the business? We call them normies. Who are the normal people? And also, Kathy is a huge activist.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of people that live abroad. My friend, Mary Mitchell Campbell, who I have in the book, and you know her, Cynthia, and you probably do too, Chelsea. But she is a big activist. So we garnered each other. Deb Messing was a big help. We really went after people abroad. And when you get to know somebody who's like they're fighting for themselves as trying to get dinner, it changes your whole perspective on what you're going to fight for in this life. Or maybe I could not be abused by my father, or maybe I'm not going to be beat up on the playground. And what does that look like? What kind of decisions informed me then as a child and now as an adult? These are the stories that I find really impactful too. I'm with you. Of course, it's great to hear all of us navigate this business, taking up for ourselves. And I think there's stuff to learn on all fronts. And it's a very brave story to tell. And I bet if I asked either one of you, maybe you've been thinking about that question, but if I asked you off the cuff, you might not know what the answer is. But it's a brave thing to be able to tell your story. And it could be very private. It could be very public. But I encourage you both with the students and the people that you work with. So oftentimes the voice, we get stuck. And a lot of times it's here. It's not even technical. And I know it's been that way with me and with other students that I've taught. And I would encourage you to start implementing that question when someone's stuck or can't move forward or doesn't feel seen or heard. I think it's a beautiful question to ask somebody. It means you care too. To become a better artist, we are the ultimate communicators, right? So to become a better artist, how can we do that? We have to be the vessel. As Agnes de Mille said, we must. So what's stopping the vessel from working? What's stopping the voice? What's stopping the extension? What is stopping us physically, mentally, emotionally? And a lot of times it comes down to that question.
I love that. I think that's so true. And everything is tied in the body. Everything is tied together. The body what's that great book, The Body Knows the Score. The body remembers.
The body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, while we're talking about books, we also are in love with this book, which podcast listeners, you can't see what I'm holding up. It is your children's book, What Will I Do with My Love Today? It's Chelsea's little daughter's favorite new book. Please share, Chelsea.
Yes. Cynthia sent me a copy of this, and we've been reading it a ton recently. And Kristin, I think you'll get a kick out of this. On like the second to the last page, the little girl I'm going to tear up saying this, but like the little girl has her arms open wide, and my little 2-year-old gives that girl a hug, gives the book a hug whenever we get to that page. She just smiles and gives it a hug. And I'm just like, oh, this is pure. This is so pure. I love this book. I really do. And I know, Cynthia, there's a few things in it that feel really resonant for you personally. Yes. What were you going to say about that, Cynthia?
You and I, Kristin, share two big things in common. One of which we are on opposite sides of the extreme end of the, height spectrum.
Yes, we
You're
are.
on the shorter side. I'm on the taller side. We're both on the extreme edges there. And we're both adopted.
We're both adopted. And, when I met you, I was like, well, this is the long and short of it right here. But then to find out that you're adopted too, I was like, it's a special bond. It's hard to explain to anybody else, but those who are in the club understand.
Yeah. And as I was reading your book for the first time, I got to the page. We're just going to cry through this whole podcast. I literally went,
bring it.
I gasped. I teared up when I read that line about the little girl being adopted, because there was nothing in the book that said it was going to go in that direction. Right. And it was kind of normalized. It didn't become the thing that the book was about. And there was something about that even at my, in my 50s was like a really healing little moment for me in this book. So I'm so curious. Did you start out intending to put that in there, or did that sort of spontaneously come out when you were writing? How did that happen?
Well,
while I wipe my tears.
No, I so get it. It makes me emotional too. My lit agent had called me during COVID, and he knew I was twiddling my thumbs. I practiced so many scales, all kinds of music. I read, I binge watched everything. He knew I was going crazy because I like to keep busy. And he said, you had great success in 2009 with your autobiography. You should write another book. And I said, I only want to do a children's book. He said, well, then write it. And then let's see what happens. And I didn't know what it was going to be about. And then my mom mentioned to me are there many books about adoption for kids? And I did some research and I found out that there wasn't. But I didn't want to make it about that. So I did subliminally, but I didn't want to lead with that. And I'm looking at my dog one night and I'm thinking, I adopted her. Why can't it be about my dog and me? And then I started writing the book, and honestly, I got to tell you, it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be because of the prose and the way you write it, and I had to have some help. But I wrote that book, and it took me a long time. It took me a long time because I didn't want to give it away, and I didn't want that to be the thing. I wanted it to be about acceptance and love for everybody, no matter what you look like, where you're from, any of it. And then I had to find the illustrator. And I had like 1,500 illustrators. I was looking at their work. And I found Maine Diaz, who's from Brazil. I found her, and I just was like, I narrowed it down, and the one thing that kept staying was her. Because that's very important for a children's book, obviously. And I loved writing that book, and I did release it during COVID. But I'm glad it's out there in the world. And like I said, there's not many books about rescue and adoption. Because if you want to know, I'm a little rescue myself, and so is Cynthia. So,
yeah.
That's really, really sweet. Yeah, we're loving it in our house.
I'm so happy to hear that, Chelsea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've got fans over here. You just mentioned something about how that book had a theme of acceptance and belonging. And one of my favorite chapters in your other recent book, I'm No Philosopher, but I Got Thoughts, which was
Best title.
awesome to listen to. Amazing title. You did the audiobook. Like I said, like I just felt like I was like hanging out. We were spending time together. But one of my favorite chapters was thoughts about belonging. And you talk about how belonging is different than acceptance. And you said it doesn't depend on someone else's approval. Belonging is a feeling you recognize in yourself. And this is something we talk about a lot, Cynthia and I, with our clients and, just people in the industry and just, gosh, human beings in general, right? But it feels like that inner knowing is so crucial, especially in our business. I'm curious, like, how did you find that feeling within yourself? Can you expound upon that idea?
I grew up in Oklahoma, so small town USA. I was the only one in my town like me, meaning loved to sing and dance and act. And when I moved to New York, I was like, what am I doing here? I came with a job, which not everybody gets, and I realized how lucky that was. I came in on audition, but I did get a job. I went back home. I turned down AVA in Philadelphia and turned down a career in opera, basically, and moved to New York. And then when I got here and I was settled, I was performing at Paper Mill Playhouse, and I was living my best life. I'm looking around. I'm like, I get pushed around to here a lot because I'm very tiny. I get made fun of because of the way I sound, and I'm not really a big city girl, and I don't belong here. And I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but I'm going to figure it out because I love what I do. So nothing was going to deter me. But it wasn't until maybe 5 years later, once I had become, I thought, a New Yorker. And I was like, what's different now? Within myself, I was asking, what's different for you, Kristin, that you feel like you belong? You're not a New Yorker, but what's changed? I think because I finally went, you do have space here. You're safe. You are where you need to be. And people that don't think that need to take a step back and reevaluate themselves. It's not about them. It's about you knowing that you are where you need to be. So the lesson for me was when you self-accept, you are where you need to be, and that the space that you are taking up in is rightfully yours. And then you get that sense of knowing, of belonging. It's not by somebody's approval. No, it's by your own. And my publisher was like, you sure you want to write a chapter about belonging? And I said, but you don't know how I want to write it. It's not like, well, I belong because I found my tribe. No, I found the space that I live in. I knew I was where I was supposed to be at that time in my life. And it hasn't changed. And until it changes, I'll find a new belonging.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Kristin, I think I'm going to pivot a tiny bit into your Broadway boot camp, because I feel like everything you just said is so much of what you instill in these kids. I mean, you are Kristin Chenoweth. It would be very easy for a camp like that to become the kids trying to get the approval of Kristin Chenoweth, or to get Kristin Chenoweth to see them. And that's not what that camp is. I've done 2 years now. That is not what that camp is. Somehow these kids, I feel like, come away with that sense of belonging, and sense that they're in the right place of where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's so much joy. It's so not about approval or trying to get you to see them, because you do see them. Talk to us a little bit about that. It's a really magical experience, I have to say. And that comes from you.
I'm so glad you're involved, because you've become integral. You and I taught some together last summer together. And that was so fun for me too, because we tend to agree. That was also nice. But, 15 years ago, somebody died in our town and left a lot of money to build a performing arts center. And then they came to me and said they were going to name the theater after me. And I was like, I'm too young. They said, no, you're not. And
thanks a lot.
I was, what are you talking about? And then my dad really challenged me of how do you want this theater to look? What's it going to look like? How do you want to be remembered? And what's your legacy? What's going to be the handprint of you here? And so that was a big challenge. I obviously have brought in a lot of people that do their acts like me. I brought in a lot of the Broadway shows. I'm very proud of that. That Broadway is represented in my hometown. And we have the best theater. It's gorgeous. It's a state-of-the-art, designed by a wonderful architect, and the sound is beautiful. That all being said, I came up with the idea of doing a Broadway boot camp. I call it Kristin Chenoweth Broadway Boot Camp. I bring in people like Cynthia to come teach. I bring in some Broadway stars to come in and teach. I bring in the best of the best because I want them to have the experience that I didn't have, A, and B, I want to normalize the fact that we are just normal people. When you're sitting there with Kevin Chamberlain, he's like, where's the barbecue? We understand that we're just there to have fun. We're all at camp. And I know I need to utilize my faculty when I ask people to come. I need to make sure that they are the kind of faculty that fit into my journey here, which is we're just all here. We're all here to be artists. We're all here to learn. I learn every time I do the camp. Cynthia, I know you do.
Yes.
Yes. And by the end of the 2 weeks, our tanks are full as faculty members, and the kids are ready, even if they don't do this for their living. We talk a lot about life skills and about rejection and being there for your teammates when they score or when they hit a transition, and we see these transitions happen before our eyes. And to me, it's the most important thing that I do, and the thing that I'm most proud of, not for me, for them. And just Sunday night, I had a concert in Santa Barbara at the Granada Theater, and I asked Miley Merrick, I don't know if you remember Miley Kai Merrick, who sang Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again.
Yep.
I asked her to sing, and she said, I'm going to do Wishing. I said, do you have another song? She goes, well, you haven't heard it. I go, exactly. Do you have something else? And she said, I could sing Light Piazza. I said, sing that. And she killed it. And whenever I'm in a town where a camper went that I feel is ready to perform on stage, I invite them on there. And, it's a full circle moment for me, for them, for all of us who teach. And I'm deeply appreciative of everybody involved. It's not just me. There's so many things that go on before I get there. And I couldn't do it without my team. And all I want is for kids to feel seen, heard, a sense of belonging, learn how to root for others, learn how to root for themselves when no one does at home, and continue to find their passion. So many kids don't know their passion or their purpose. I've seen more kids walk away going, I know what I'm going to do now. And that just brings me the biggest joy of all. So thanks for asking about it. KCBBC, our auditions start in March for anybody listening that has somebody from age 13 to 18 that want to try out. And it's worldwide now. So we have kids from all over the world coming. I'm very proud of it.
It is a beautiful, beautiful program. Please audition. If you are of that age, I really encourage you to audition. Yes. Well, we only have a couple minutes left. So can I ask you a whopper of a question?
Of course.
Just as we were kind of thinking about questions we wanted to ask in this podcast, you've got your camp. You have written or brought to life 3 books. You are producing and starring in a new Stephen Schwartz musical. You have also dealt with some pretty devastating personal losses. You have been managing health issues. You had your 20th anniversary of Wicked, and you've gotten married. So you just have like some extreme ups and downs and sideways and back and forth. And so I don't even know how you answer this question, but let's see what comes out. How do you navigate those extreme ups and downs in life and wearing all those different hats and finding, as you said earlier, forgiveness for some things? Do you got thoughts? You're no philosopher, but I hope you got thoughts.
I got some thoughts. How do I navigate it? It's a constant work in progress. I'm still learning how to navigate things. There's always going to be, in the best of times, there's always going to be a sniper from the side that gets you. And that's not just me, that's everybody. And you're like, how am I supposed to deal with that? So I've done this. I take things as they come. I also am a firm believer in counseling. That's a lot of help, prayer, and meditation. Time alone. I'm just listing the things that help me. When I get my time alone, and I say my time because it's precious to me, I'm better for others, including my husband. I need to have room always until the day I don't, but I always need to have room to find time to be a better artist. And I love rehearsal. I love voice lessons still. I love learning. I'm still a student. I don't view myself as, I've arrived. I just never will. But that's not to say that life hasn't, given me some doozies. But that's called life. And I'm lucky I have a support system. I have a great circle of gals that I rely on. I have a great mom. And not everybody
You
has
have a
that.
great mom.
I have a great mom. Yes. Thank you, Cynthia.
She is special.
And,
Both your parents are so special.
I've watched her survive cancer 3 times. And
Oh, my
so
goodness.
pretty much anything that comes my way, I go, how can I not try to look at things from a different way? I have not been perfect in my life. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I have learned a lot, learned from them and learned what I don't want to do again. And the main thing is, and I bring it back up because it's the hardest thing, I think forgiveness is so hard. I'm so hard on myself. I'm your classic nightmare of perfectionism and, wanting to stay busy so I don't have to think about the tough stuff. But this past year, and this just goes to show you, you always got to be ready, willing, and able to change your life. This past year, I had to take a look at my schedule. I crumbled. I'm always the strong one. People look at my schedule and go, I used to wear it as a badge, like I'm a workhorse and don't mess with me. But that's not necessarily the way I want to be anymore. I need to have time to enjoy life. I need to have time to enjoy my husband, my marriage. I need to have time to enjoy when the good things do happen instead of on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. So it goes back to a lot of things that I've heard over the years with whereas Oprah would say, be in the moment. I was like, yeah. It's the truth. Being in the moment gives you so many gifts. Forgiving others who've hurt you gives you the gift of freedom. I'm very sensitive to other behavior, and I tend to take things personally when someone's nasty to me or about me. But the truth is, so little of it has to do with me, right? The day you wake up and you realize that the world doesn't revolve around you is a beautiful, beautiful blessing. Then you can be relieved. And I'm proud to say that I've graduated from caring too much. I still care. That I would be a liar if I said I didn't care, but I have graduated from that. Oh my God, so-and-so said this about me, and this magazine thinks I'm old, and this person hates my voice, and none of those things I can control. What I can control is what kind of friend I want to be, what kind of daughter I want to be, what kind of singer I want to be, what kind of artist I want to be, and how I want to be remembered, which is what this podcast has so beautifully let me talk about me for 30 minutes and what I want to do. So those are very helpful things to remember as we go along in this journey. Nobody's really thinking about you as much as you are.
So true.
Ain't that
So
the
true.
truth?
Well, I just want to end with my favorite prayer from your book because it's so good. And I'm going to use it every day. And here I'm going to cry again. Goodness gracious, Kristin.
That's okay.
I love this. Are you ready? Here we go. Oh, God. Here we go. Please note use of plural pronoun. Amen. That's my favorite.
Can I get a hallelujah?
That just sums it up for me.
Sums it up. I love, prayer has been a big one for me, but also growing up as a Christian, I always thought, well, I can't like a philosopher. That's against my religion.
Yeah.
No, there's lots to learn from many other kinds of religions, prayers, faiths, philosophers. I've come to understand how important Rumi is in my life. I think I quote him several times in my book, my favorite being, somewhere there is a garden between good and evil. I will meet you there. So there's lots to learn, and I've had to learn to have 2 ears and 1 mouth so I can listen and hear what I need to hear. So there you go. Y'all are amazing.
Thank you so much.
Kristin, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for talking the real talk. This was the real stuff.
Of course. It is. And I want to encourage y'all to keep doing it.
All right, my friend. I wish you well on all the things that you are going to be doing coming up in your life.
Thanks, Kristin.
I'm really happy for you guys. Have a good day. Bye, Cynthia. Later.
You too.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you love musical theater. Am I right? And whether you're working towards performing on Broadway or mustering up the courage to audition for your local community theater show, here at Broadway Vocal Coach, we have the tools and resources to help you take the next step towards your dreams. Here's 4 ways you can work with us. Ready to shed imposter syndrome and let your voice be heard? BVC Academy is the online course you need to level up your skills and your confidence. You'll dive into 7 different styles and genres of musical theater and learn foundational acting and performance skills, much like you'd find in a BFA musical theater program. Are you ready for a transformation? And do you have a plan for that? If you're feeling stuck, we've just launched a new subscription service called BVC Masterclass that is the perfect plan to take your next step as a musical theater performer. BVC Masterclass brings you 3 classes each month and every month. A special guest masterclass with industry professionals, a mixed voice technique masterclass, and a pop rock vocal and performance masterclass. The best part is you can attend live or watch the replays anytime. Are you perhaps a high school student looking to audition for college musical theater programs? Our full-service boutique college audition prep program, BVC Aspire, takes the guesswork and the stress out of the pre-screen and audition process. It takes place each summer going into the fall of your senior year. Spots are extremely limited. And finally, BVC Studio is our exclusive membership for adult musical theater performers where you'll work with myself and Cynthia personally. Practice your material and train your voice in multiple studio classes each month. Get personalized repertoire help, audition cuts, piano tracks, and most of all, personal mentorship. Wondering which of these programs might be right for you? Take our quiz. Visit bwayvocalcoach.com/take the quiz or click the links in the show description to learn more about any of our programs. We can't wait to meet you and help you take the next step in your career. Wow. Okay, Kristin Chenoweth is so lovely and so real. And you told me this because you've worked with Kristin now for 2 summers at her Kristin Chenoweth Broadway boot camp. And she is. Well, I was so nervous before we got on this call. And now I'm like, oh, what just a lovely, like normal human being she is. Yeah. She's so great.
Yeah.
So
she
lovely.
really is. And, she'll show up to camp with no makeup on, hair in a ponytail, sweatshirt and jeans, sneakers, and she's just one of them. I think she's just really
there
disarming with the kids. And of course, when she glams up, it's phenomenal and amazing. But when she's in rehearsal with those kids, it's real, and it's really lovely how she makes those kids feel so special.
I think one of the things that I loved in diving into her most recent book, I'm No Philosopher, but I Got Thoughts, versus the memoir, the autobiography she wrote in 2009, which I think I probably read when it came out. I have a copy of that book on my shelf. But she just got so real about so many things in her life. And like you alluded to, she's dealt with severe health challenges. Like she deals with vertigo on a regular basis. She's dealt with anxiety and depression. She's had severe loss in her life.
A major injury that she had
like all of these things.
Yeah.
Yes, the major injury on set. Yeah, she talks about that in detail in that book. And I think for a lot of us out here, like we see someone like Kristin who has gone from success to success and had just, she's just living this professional, amazing life that so many people aspire to. But like she said, there's always something coming at you sideways that you didn't see coming. You didn't know. And she shares this quote in the book that I think really like sums up a lot of what I'm gathering as her personal philosophy. It's a quote from Elizabeth Edwards, and it's, "She stood in the storm, and when the wind did not blow her way, she adjusted her sails." And I love this quote because it's like, oh my gosh, the wind is never blowing in our direction, my friends. It is always conspiring against us. And when you can have the fortitude and that self-knowing and that direction of, this is what I want to accomplish, or this is what I'm trying to do with my life, this is the legacy I want to lead, which she feels so clear about. And I love hearing that from her. You adjust your sails and say, okay, the wind's not blowing in my direction. I'll catch it. I'm going to make this work for me. I'm going to readjust. I still know my purpose. I still know my direction in life. And this is not going to deter me. This isn't going to get me down. And I just love that. I love that sense of course, optimism, but just that determination and self-knowing of, here's what I'm out to do. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do it. I know that I can, and I deserve to see this realized in my life.
Yeah, for all y'all, go get these books. They are really, really lovely books. The children's book is lovely.
Yeah.
The My Moment book, the compilation of lots of women's stories, is a really incredible book. And Kristin's I'm No Philosopher book, I just found delightful. I laughed. I literally laughed out loud in parts. I literally cried in parts. And it's a little indescribable. It's not just a memoir. There are memoir-ish parts, but there's also really silly charts and graphs and silly sayings. And I mean, it's hard to describe what kind of book it exactly is, but I will say it is delightful. It will make you laugh. It will make you feel things. It'll make you think. It's really lovely. Yeah, much like her.
I loved this conversation today. This was so much fun for me.
Yeah.
So much fun for me. Thanks, Cynthia, for arranging it, making this happen. And thank you to Kristin for making the time to speak with us. It's really, really special.
Yeah. And shout out to her assistant, Jordan, who facilitated the whole thing. He is also a delight. Thank you, Jordan. And an incredible singer in his own right, I have to say. So watch for Jordan because we're going to be seeing more of him as well.
Amazing. Talent abounds in the Kristin Chenoweth team, as only we would expect. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you are subscribed to the Broadway Vocal Coach podcast and never miss an episode. Also, take a screenshot and share this on Instagram. Tag us when you do at BWay Vocal Coach. Share this episode with a friend and consider leaving us a review. And if you are ready to take your next step as a musical theater performer, but you aren't entirely sure what that should be, take our quiz. We'll strategize with you to outline a roadmap to your unique goals. Plus, from there, you can book a free consult with us. Visit bwayvocalcoach.com/take the quiz. We can't wait to hear your story and help you take the next step in your career.